In a recent interview, the rabbi spoke of the deep division within Israeli society between the Jews and the Hellenists, or between the Israelis and the Jews. Does the rabbi mean to say that all non-observant Jews are to be considered Hellenists?
It is of paramount importance that we understand the various terms used in this discussion and to whom they refer. When we speak of Hellenists in the modern sense, we refer to people, to Jews, who wish to see Jews in general and the Jewish state in particular become less and less Jewish, and therefore more and more like any other country. And what I wish to stress in an earlier interview was the fact that viewing the divide within the Jewish people in terms of right and left, politically speaking, which is usually a reference to a person's opinion regarding what has been called in the past land for peace, something which we all know in fact translates into land for more war. That terminology is misleading, entirely inaccurate, and deliberately so, I might add, and therefore obfuscates the issues. The true divide is not about right and left, or about land or peace or war, or what to do or not to do regarding this or that Arab population. The real issue is what to do with the Jews. What kind of people do we wish the Jews to be? What kind of country do we wish Israel to be? And that is why, as I mentioned, Hagaon Rav Shach, in his day widely considered to be the leader of the ultra-Orthodox so-called or Haredi world, he was known for not agreeing with the position from a Torah perspective that it is forbidden according to the Torah to transfer any part of Eretz Yisrael to non-Jewish control or sovereignty, at least not at the present point in Jewish history. He did not accept that position, but on the other hand he fully understood and stated so that those people who are for giving land to the Arabs are doing so mainly not to bring about peace, but to bring about rather a less Jewish kind of state here in Israel. In other words, politically one could have defined Rav Shach as belonging to the left wing. But, of course, it would be totally inane to suggest that he had anything in common with the Hellenists, in other words, with those Jews who wished to see Israel be less Jewish. Quite the opposite, as we all know. And as I pointed out further, it is not about halachic observance. It is not about an orthodox, so-called orthodox lifestyle. I say so-called because I do not like the term orthodox. I think it is also a misleading and problematic term, but that is for another discussion. As previously mentioned, there are no small number of ostensibly Orthodox Jews, Jews who are either largely observant, halachically speaking, in some cases entirely so, but who have at the same time internalized and entirely accepted the essential elements of modern Hellenist thought. And therefore they also associate with, identify with those ideologies and political movements. And today, because of the confused state of the Jewish people today, where so many people are entirely or partially unobservant, halachically speaking, where so many Jews are to a large extent ignorant of most essential facets and concepts which form the underpinning, the foundations of Jewish thought. It therefore follows that there are many Jews today who are entirely unobservant, or in some cases partially observant. They're traditional. They observe the festivals, some of the festivals. Some of them observe the Shabbat, the Sabbath, to some extent also. Some of them, for example, will not cook on the Shabbat, but they will drive. All sorts of strange forms of behavior from a halachic perspective, but from their traditional perspective makes sense to them. There are many such Jews who are Jewish in their essential identification and not at all in agreement with the modern Hellenist agenda, and yet they're not halachically observant. So these things today do not follow the same obvious patterns of behavior that existed in the past. And therefore it would be entirely incorrect and also terribly unjust and tragically misleading to claim that most Jews in the world today, or most Jews in Israel today, are Hellenist in their essential orientation. That is not the case. And the Israeli political map, the results of Israeli elections bear this fact out. The vast majority of Jewish voters in Israel vote for right of center, or either center right or right of center, so-called, using the usual terminologies, center right or right of center parties. Only a very small minority vote for the clearly Hellenized extreme left-wing agendas. This has been borne out time and again. In rough terms, statistically, approximately 30% of the Jews in Eretz Yisrael today are halachically observant. That is to say, either Haredi or Dati, either what's called usually ultra-Orthodox or Orthodox, and only about 10%, if that, are hardcore Hellenist in their ideology, in their way of life, in their essential attitudes. And that leaves, therefore, approximately 60% of the Jews in the middle. And that is, in fact, the breakdown as I see it. The struggle for the soul of Israel is all about bringing more and more of those 60% towards the Jewish camp and distancing them from the so-called Israeli or Hellenist camp. It is only because the Israelis, in inverted commas, as opposed to the Jews, have been successful for many decades in convincing many of those more traditional Jews, the 60%, therefore the silent majority essentially, amongst the Jews of Israel. They have been successful in attracting them and convincing them that they belong with their Hellenized agendas and political movements. It is only for that reason that they continue to enjoy any political power at all. And despite this fact, their political power is on the wane in many respects, certainly from an electoral point of view. The future of Israel, its direction in this and future generations, depends entirely on attracting the 60% towards the 30% and breaking the ties between the 60% and the 10%. That is to say, to attract and form associations and connections between the Torah observant Jews and the more traditional Jews who may not be observant but who identify as Jews, who wish to see Israel a Jewish country, to form a kind of coalition with those people, with more and more of those people, and to sever the ties between that silent majority and the vocal, politically savvy and powerful Hellenist minority. These are the issues that many in Israel would rather not discuss, but these in fact are the true issues, and until we come to terms with these questions and are willing to speak about them openly, we will not make progress. We will continue to see a small minority hell-bent on making Israel less and less Jewish continue to influence public debate and wield political power way beyond their numbers.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.